Hello there and welcome. You're watching World News coming to you live from Algiers. Next up are the headlines. The proceedings of the 42nd Ordinary Session of the Executive Council of the African Union continue with a call for increasing efforts to deepen continental integration toward realizing Africa's development aspirations. In southeast Turkey and parts of Syria, rescue operations have dwindled, although more survivors were found alive, and the focus has turned now to recovery and cleanup. Also ahead in our news, Palestinians have condemned the last move by the parliament of the Zionist entity to revoke citizenship or residency and deport every Palestinian prisoner who receives financial aid from the Palestinian Authority. And NATO chief urges Turkey to ratify Finland and Sweden NATO's membership bids. Hello again and welcome to the program. Fast in our topical news, the chairman of the African Union Commission, Moussa Faki, affirmed that the 42nd Ordinary Session of the African Union Executive Council that the Commission is making great efforts to launch the Trade Area project in Africa, as well as facing all challenges to promote peace in the African continent.
Ongoing efforts are being made to accelerate the implementation of the Continental Free Trade Area, so it is necessary to enhance investment in the continent and make effective use of national wealth to accelerate digital transformation and knowledge transfer between the continent's countries. External interferences pose obstacles to the peaceful settlement of disputes, and over the past year, the African Union has made efforts mission in promoting peace and stability in the continent.
Algerian Foreign Minister Mr. Mtala Mamra held bilateral talks with the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs of Namibia, as well as a number of his African counterparts, such as the Foreign Minister of Angola, Rwanda, Uganda, Tanzania, Somalia, as well as the Deputy Foreign Ministers of Cote d'Ivoire and Niger on the sidelines of the 42nd session of the African Union Executive Council in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. The talks focused mainly on the session's agenda, as well as strengthening coordination to overcome the challenges facing the African continent in the political, security, and development fields. The Algerian foreign minister also held bilateral talks with his Malian counterpart, Abdoulaye Diop, as well as with the head of the Economic Community of West African States, Omar Touré, discussing Mali's matter. Lamamra reassured that Algeria would continue its efforts to crystallize the necessary consensus between the parties that signed the Algiers Agreement. The talks also dealt with the prospects for overcoming obstacles to the peace and reconciliation path led by Algeria by virtue of its assumption of the International Mediation Presidency and the committee to follow up on the implementation of the Peace and Reconciliation Agreement in Mali. During the 42nd Ordinary Session of the Executive Council of the African Union, Shafiqa Ben Saoula, Algeria's candidate, was elected for a second term as a judge in the African Court on Human and People's Rights. At the end of the election process, the Algerian candidate won by a majority of votes, that is 38 out of 41 countries. In a meeting with the Secretary General of the Algerian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Amar Belani, the Turkish ambassador to Algeria, Mahinur Ozedmer Guktas, expressed her deep gratitude to Algerian President Abdelmadjid Tebboune and Algerian people for their solidarity with their country following the devastating earthquake that hit Turkey. The Turkish ambassador to Algeria praised the high professionalism of the Algerian rescue teams who were in Turkey to participate in rescue mission after the deadly 7.8 earthquake that caused up to the moment more than 40,000 deaths. The Secretary General of the Foreign Ministry, Mr. Ammar Belani, said during a meeting with the EU Ambassador to Algiers, Thomas Ackert, that Algeria seeks an equally important partnership with the European Union in a context marked by tensions with France and Spain. Mr. Belani also renewed on the occasion Algeria's position in favor of dialogue and peaceful solution to the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, which takes into account the interests of all parties. The African Development Bank has announced that the Trans-Saharan Highway linking Algeria and Nigeria has entered the final stages of its completion. Let's find out more in this report by Mohammed Khatil.
After lifting all the obstacles that hampered its realization over the last years, the Trans-Saharan Highway project has finally entered the final stages of its completion. The African Development Bank revealed that the progress in the works of the road section located in Niger exceeded 97% after completing 1,890 kilometers out of the 1,950 kilometers that cross the country.
The completion of the Trans-Saharan Highway section in Niger, after completing 1,890 kilometers out of 1,950 kilometers, which equals 97%, the only works left to do are those related to reinforcing the base layer, the paving, the signage and some other works related to the environmental and social management plan.
The significant progress in the works of completing the Trans-Saharan Highway in its section crossing Niger contributed to the increase in road traffic and movement of people on the Algerian-Nigerian and Chadian-Nigerian borders.
With the road being completed almost at 100% and the paving works completed at 60%, and with the reopening of the Algerian-Nigerian borders in 2021, we have noticed an increase of interest by people and transporters in addition to the reduced transportation time, which has paved the way for new economic opportunities for the people living near the project.
This vital project, which links 6 African countries over a distance of about 10,000 kilometers, starting from the Algerian capital Algiers to Lagos in Nigeria and passing through Niger, Chad and Mali, as well as Tunisia, will play an important role in achieving development and enhancing inter-trade exchanges.
The Algerian-Cuban Economic Forum, held on February 14th and 15th in Havana, Cuba, under the co-chairmanship of Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel and Health Minister Abdelhak Saihi, was an opportunity to highlight investment and business opportunities in Algeria and Cuba. Meanwhile, several operation agreements were signed between the two countries on the occasion of the holding of the 23rd session of the Algerian-Cuban Joint Commission. The leadership of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic has completed the steps that followed the 16th Congress of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Sagi al-Hamra and Rio de Oro, the last of which was appointing a new government and sending, in its capacity as founding member of the African Union, its new Foreign Minister, Mohamed Sadati, to participate in the preparatory meeting of the AU Summit of Heads of State and Governments. The Sahrawi leadership also endeavors to implement the outcomes of the Front's last conference under the slogan of intensifying fighting to expel the occupation and achieve sovereignty. The head of Libya's national oil company announced plans on Wednesday to boost the country's oil production from 1.2 million barrels a day to 2 million barrels a day. The plan of projects extends from 3 to 5 years. Mr. Farhat bin Kadara spoke during a meeting in Benghazi, where representatives from Kearney, an American consulting company, attended the meeting to discuss the strategic plan alongside heads of local oil companies and experts in the oil and gas field.
The second part of our strategic plan is to achieve an increase in production. We have a plan of projects extending from 3 to 5 years to increase production from 1.2 million barrels a day to 2 million barrels of oil a day. The third part of our plan was the gas field. How can we invest in gas and achieve a boom in increasing gas production, either through exploration or attracted investment, or through the capabilities of the gas stocks currently available to the corporation and its subsidiaries? The fourth part is the topic of clean energy and the investment in clean energy, either in the local market or for export abroad.
In Africa still, police fired tear gas at Senegal opposition leader Ousmane Sonko supporters in Dakar on Thursday. Sonko is accused of libel, and his court appearances often spur clashes with security forces ahead of presidential election in 2024. In 2021, violent clashes broke out when Sonko was first summoned and arrested over sexual assault allegations, which he denies, saying they are politically motivated.
We are fighting against injustice, and we have seen what they want to inflict on Sonko is an injustice. President Ousmane Sonko is the hope of the whole nation. There is a conscience of African youth that he has awakened.
More than 10 days after the earthquake that hit Turkey and Syria, rescue teams are still finding miraculous survivals. In Syria, meanwhile, people affected by the disaster say that help is not reaching them quickly. More details with Nabil Khazini.
They fought for 10 days in a mission they knew it was always going to be against the odds. But despite the danger, despite the difficulty of the mission, they kept digging, kept hoping, determined to find someone alive trapped under the rebels. And miraculously, the rescue teams in Turkey succeeded to save a mother and her child after being trapped more than 200 hours following the tragedy. Hugs of happiness to cheer the moment of a challenge. But that challenge is still continuing in another form for those who survived.
Allah knows the best. He is the only one who can save their grandsons' lives. We don't know. The rescuers say they are dead, but we are not sure.
Others took this military ship turned into a floating hospital, a place to access medical treatment there. In Syria, the situation is even worse. It is here where the damage done by the quake adds to a damage done by a 12-year war. People here struggled for years to get help, and now they say that aid is slow to reach them.
People in shelters are entitled to aid, and so are we. We are all the same people. We are one hand. They are in need, and we are in need. There are orphans, there are children, there are people who need to eat. I was without food for 2 entire days until I asked my neighbor for help, and she sent me some food.
Only 10 days ago, this area was a place for the living. Now it's for the dead. So far, the number of those who remain under the debris remains unknown.
Palestinians have condemned the last move by the parliament of the Zionist entity to revoke their citizenship or residency and deport every Palestinian prisoner who receives financial aid from the Palestinian Authority. The new legislation would affect hundreds of prisoners. This adds to months of rising deadly violence, accentuated by Zionist raids against Palestinians in the West Bank.
The situation for Palestinian prisoners in the Zionist entity's prisons is becoming increasingly dire. The government has approved a new draft law that revokes the residency and citizenship of those who have been involved in commando operations, leaving them without a home or nationality after years of imprisonment. Meanwhile, Palestinian prisoners continue to resist the repressive measures of extremist Itamar Ben-Gvir.
These decisions are unjust, criminal, unfair, and repressive, and are aimed at breaking the will of our people. The Zionist authorities are in a dilemma in front of their people, especially that their people are more inclined to extremism, and Ben-Gvir and Smotrich are on top of them. They want to present to their people and show them that they are killing the Palestinian people, demolishing their homes and displacing them to preserve the votes and ensure that they remain in their positions.
The occupiers' government is also continuing its policy of demolishing Palestinian homes, which is seen as means of suffocating resistance and venting buried hatred against all those associated with it. The occupation forces are continuing their daily arrests and raids in the occupied West Bank and Al-Quds. In turn, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre affirmed that the United States is deeply dismayed at the Zionist cabinet decision to expand settlement activities on the occupied West Bank, adding that such activity creates facts on the ground that undermine a two-state solution.
We are deeply dismayed by Israelis' announcement that they will advance thousands of new settlements and retroactively legalize 9 outposts in the West Bank that were until now illegal under Israeli law. The United States strongly opposes these unilateral measures, which exacerbates tensions, harm trust between the parties.
In the midst of this, Palestinians continue to see the imprisoned as heroes in a struggle against decades of occupation, deserving of support and justice. As the area of popular resistance expands, the Zionist entity's government is enacting unjust laws to break the will of Palestinian people and to preserve the power of extremist figures like Itamar Ben-Gvir.
To a different story now. As part of his trip to Turkey, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg was received by Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan in Ankara on Thursday. Jens Stoltenberg said the alliance was sending tens of thousands of tents to Turkey following the major quake in the country's south. Earlier, during a news conference with the Turkish foreign minister, NATO chief urged Turkey to ratify Finland and Sweden NATO's membership bids.
For me, this just demonstrates that Sweden and Finland understand and are implementing policies which recognizes the concerns that Turkey has expressed, and also why I think that the time has come to ratify. Let me add one more thing, and that is that this is a Turkish decision.
In NATO-related story now, China's foreign ministry has expressed strong opposition to NATO's labeling of China as a threat. The criticism comes after NATO's defense ministers reached an agreement on China as a security challenge to the alliance in the 2022 strategic concept document. During a news briefing, a Chinese foreign ministry spokesperson urged NATO to abandon its outdated concepts of confrontation, accusing the alliance of creating imaginary enemies and causing chaos in Europe and the Asia-Pacific. The statement was released shortly after NATO pledged to deliver more tanks to Ukraine during a meeting in Brussels.
We have repeatedly pointed out that NATO's so-called new strategic concept document completely disregards the facts, confuses right and wrong, stubbornly defends its erroneous position on systematic challenges to China, and discredited China's foreign policy. NATO makes irresponsible remarks on China's normal military development and defense policy, encouraging confrontation, which is full of Cold War mentality and ideological bias. China is seriously concerned about this and firmly opposes it.
Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko claimed during a news conference in Minsk that the US does not want peace in Ukraine and it's pressuring European countries which desire peace. The president also expressed his readiness to invite US President Joe Biden to visit Belarus, along with Russian President Vladimir Putin, if he wants peace in Ukraine. Lukashenko made these remarks during an unprepared news conference that lasted for over 3 hours.
You want peace in Ukraine? Let's start talking about peace tomorrow. And the guns will stop firing. Let's start from tomorrow. I know what I'm talking about. But you don't want it. Europe wants it. The Americans don't want it. And they have bent Europe down, put them in subordinate position, and do whatever they want with it.
To Europe now, thousands of people from a variety of professions marched through the streets of Paris on Thursday to protest against French President Emmanuel Macron's proposed pension reform. Demonstrators held signs and chanted slogans criticizing the government's plan to increase the retirement age by 2 years to 64. Despite their efforts, labor unions were racing against time as their 5th day of protest against the reforms came just 2 days before winter school holidays, which could break their momentum.
I'm in a positive state of mind because I see a lot of people on the street taking part in the gathering. This has not happened in Dubai since 1995, which means people are fed up. People don't want to retire at 64 because today's reality is already complicated and difficult for people. I think we will win.
This is a democracy and people only have a month to debate the pensions reform. The government has kept its project hidden for months despite the fact that it was ready, and they only yield on details when people take to the street. Well, we will keep going.
And for more news making headlines around the globe, here's the news in brief.
U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said on Thursday that the United States was ready to defend the Baltic states of Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania if required. Lloyd Austin added that Washington will keep its military presence in the region. The three Baltic states, neighbors of Russia and its ally Belarus, was once ruled from Moscow and are now part of NATO and the European Union.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has broken ground on a large greenhouse project and the development of 1,000 apartments, according to a video released by state-run television KRT on Thursday, highlighting the construction project amid foreign suspicion of food shortages. Neighboring South Korea said on Wednesday that a food crisis appeared to be worsening in the north. North Korea has not confirmed any food shortages, but its ruling party has scheduled a meeting for late February for what state media said was the very important and urgent task to establish the correct strategy for the development of agriculture.
Sri Lanka raised electricity prices by 66% on Thursday in a move the government hopes will pursue the International Monetary Fund to provide the balance for its crisis-stricken economy. The increase announced by Power and Energy Minister comes after the government raised electricity prices by 75% last year and adds to the pain of Sri Lankan already struggling with inflation above 54% year-on-year in January and income taxes as high as 36%. Local residents who have already experienced rising living costs and record inflation since last year's economic crisis began were already unsettled by the announcement of the price hike.
Rescue ship Life Support saved on Thursday 156 migrants at sea as the European Council had discussed regulating the activities of charity vessels rescuing migrants in the Mediterranean Sea and run by non-governmental organizations. 46 migrants, all men from Bangladesh, Pakistan, Sudan, Eritrea and Egypt, were rescued in a night operation, while the other 110 were saved in a second operation carried out in international waters. The life support rescue ship, run by Italian medical charity Emergency, was assigned Civitavecchia, north of Rome, as a port for disembarkation.
Well, that's the end of our program. For more, you can visit our social media platforms. From me and the rest of the English News team, thank you for watching, and bye for now.